believe someone has a correction that they want to make to the minutes.
Just add my name for those being present, please. Joshua
Yes. With that addition, any other corrections to the minutes? With that addition, do I have a motion to pass the minutes?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All who oppose? All right, I'm going to turn the meeting over to Mary. She's going to introduce all the panelists, and then we'll jump in.
Since Hurricane Helene hit on September 28th, we all, I think, as a large community, as a state, have kind of been bearing witness to the needs and the devastation. Certainly for the counselors and advisory members from the western part of the state, you all have been on our mind. And very quickly, and at the great suggestion of one of your fellow counselors, we shifted gears for this meeting to offer an opportunity to share more about disaster legal services and what that looks like in North, I hate to say, probably years. And so we have assembled a great group of folks to talk about the needs on the ground, to talk about what's happening within the legal aid organizations to respond to this, and then the pro bono opportunities. And we really hope that you will take this information and bring it back to the lawyers that are in your districts so that they can participate in this response. Lots of folks have reached out with interest. I think that's been a really positive, bright spot for the folks who are doing this work on the staff side, that they know that they have so much support from the legal community as a whole. And so we've got a great group of folks here today, and they are going to introduce themselves as they come up and go through the slides. But please feel free to ask questions. I know they want to be responsive to the questions that you all have as well. And hopefully we'll have time to answer all those. So Jackie Kiger is up first.
Thank you, Mary. As the Executive Director at Pisgah Legal Services. When Hurricane Helene hit our area in Western North Carolina, I was on my 7th week as the Executive Director at Pisgah. And so it was unlike anything I could ever have planned for. I took over from Jim Barrett, our very long time leader who was with the organization for more than 40 years. I have been with Pisgah for 14 years, most recently as the Chief Operations Officer. So while it was hard to have this experience, having gone through COVID and been with the organization for a long time before, I was very prepared to meet the needs of our staff and for our work at Pisgah, and what in particular we are seeing on the ground for the people who have been affected by Helene in our communities. So first I want to start with just a moment of some gratitude. And it was a long 3 days after the storm hit on Friday, individually and collectively, and those who have been there for us. The first responders, the frontline workers, public officials, people who have come from across the state, people who have come from outside of the state to work tirelessly to help our community recover. We didn't have water or power, we still don't have roads, schools aren't in session right now in some of our counties still. But the resilience of the Western North Carolina community is truly unmatched, and even in the face of this great challenge, we've seen a lot of efforts to come together. And you've heard or seen probably the phrase WNC Strong being used, and I really can't tell you what that means for us, but we are strong. Now, what I'm going to talk with you about right now is, that recovery process, the legal needs of our community, and the role that legal services providers like Pisgah Legal Services and our partners at Legal Aid of North Carolina, what role we play in a long-term response to a natural disaster like this. What we know, unfortunately, and have to recognize is that Hurricane Helene has physical and emotional hardship for everybody who was impacted by it in our community. But for many people, particularly vulnerable and low-income people, legal challenges will experience legal challenges as well. And so Pisgah Legal and Legal Aid of North Carolina, we're here to ensure that North Carolina to equitable legal support as they recover from this process. Now, for me, some of the stories are the most compelling part of this, and so I will share with you that clients, Alma. Alma went into labor during the hurricane. She had to drive an hour to Mission Hospital that day, and when she returned home, she found out she needed to leave her rental house because her landlords, they'd lost their house and they needed a place to live, and so they were ending her lease, and she and her newborn and family are now looking for secure housing. We were able to reach Alma through one of the many FEMA clinics we did beginning on October the 7th to help her apply for immediate financial assistance and to link her with housing, FEMA applications, or immigrant right here for. Western North Carolina. As you all know, Buncombe County already did work that now naturally aligns to the disaster response, and we're increasing it even more. Knowing your rights. It is knowing your rights when it comes to landlord-tenant matters, when it comes to your mortgage payments and the foreclosure process and what that means. And unfortunately, it is also knowing your rights when it comes to scams. I really hate to tell you all this, but not even a week into this disaster, the scammers came to Western North Carolina. People were cashing out, and then they were not doing any work, and they were disappearing. And so we immediately had to get our response out to make sure that people understood just what was fair and reasonable. What would it look like for a FEMA inspector to come out to the home? What kind of credentials would they have? What information should you share over the phone? Because at a moment of intense vulnerability, many people were looking to take advantage of that. Of course, not all, but it is something that we have played a role in previously and are playing a big role in. Housing and evictions work. Housing was already a crisis in Western North Carolina. We just simply didn't have enough housing stock and affordable housing stock. We were working on building it, but we've lost more than 400 of those units through this disaster. So we are definitely at a disadvantage right now. Shelters are open. FEMA is helping with short-term rentals. There are hotels. Are isolated, income is limited, transportation are isolated, income is limited, transportation or lack thereof, kids are not in school, and so more than ever, it is very important to have legal services to help survivors navigate escaping abuse, getting a protective order, dealing with custody matters, and some of the complications that come with custody when people have to be relocated or can't get in touch with each other. We've seen a lot of that in the last 4 weeks. And then finally, FEMA and disaster benefits. We've always helped with government benefits at HISGA, whether that's on Medicaid, Medicare. We've always helped with government benefits at HISGA, whether that's on Medicaid, Medicare, food stamps, Social Security Disability, or SSI. But FEMA now, volunteer attorneys, which is a big need. And we're seeing hundreds of people come to our FEMA clinics, which is a big need. And we're seeing hundreds of people come to our FEMA clinics, and we're complementing the work that the FEMA workers are doing by bringing them into our clinics and being able to holistically serve people. It's always been challenging. Certainly it is very challenging right now, but it is also a testament to the generous support of our community and volunteer attorneys who they are stepping up to assist us with this crucial work. And we are connected with the support of you all here at the State Bar, our partner organizations, that we will rise to meet this challenge of providing access to justice for so many people. I'm very grateful to be that we are collaborating with Legal Aid of North Carolina, because we know that the needs in Western North Carolina are so great, and by working together we can help many more people. So I just would like to take a moment to say thank you for your time, for your consideration of the people of Western North Carolina, and to end with some hope, and that is that together we really can and will make a difference. So thank you. Missed a few slides there, sorry about that.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Leslie Albritton. I'm the Chief of Staff for Legal Aid of North Carolina. Before I took on the role of Chief of Staff, I led our disaster relief project, which is a statewide project at Legal Aid, and I'll describe that in a little more detail in a minute here. I'm really grateful to be here with you today to talk to you about disaster legal services, which is a topic about which I am very passionate. I'm going to divide my talk with you into two sections. In the first, I'm going to give you an overview of our statewide framework for disaster legal services. And in the second, I'm going to talk to you just briefly about Legal Aid of North Carolina, specifically in our disaster relief project, and reiterate how we're partnering with Pisgah Legal Services and what makes this the first part of my talk. What I really want you to understand is the important role that attorneys play in disaster recovery and the way in which we really are, if not first responders, really the second responders in this vital statewide model, but it's really the national model for how legal services are integrated into disaster recovery. So this may be a little basic, but how does disaster legal services become activated? Well, our governor, as you all know, requests a disaster declaration when there's a hurricane or a tornado or some major disaster at our doorstep. And the governor can request a number of different types of disaster declarations, but it's really when a major disaster declaration is requested and then granted by the president that disaster legal services is activated. And for Helene, and this is the area in which there is individual assistance granted, and so this is where the major disaster declaration is in our state for Helene. We now have a major disaster declaration for 38 counties and for the eastern band of Cherokees. And you'll see almost all of the western part of our state has been greatly impacted, and then we've got a couple outlying counties as well. So who responds first when there's a disaster? Well, you know the Red Cross, you know about FEMA, and then there's also an organization called the North Carolina Voluntary Organizations Active in Disasters. Those are our local volunteer agencies. Legal Aid of North Carolina is a member of the NCVOAD, and Pisgah Legal Services is also a member now, or soon to be. There's also our state and local emergency management. There is Disaster Legal Services, which forms a larger partnership of legal providers. And there's also legal service agencies like Lance and Pisgah. And we are part of the larger framework of disaster legal services. This is a quick look at DLS. I'm joking because it's you can laugh. It's 9 little boxes and they're hard to read. It's not that quick. But in a nutshell, disaster legal services is formed as part of a MOU between the Federal Emergency Management Agency and the American Bar Association's Young Lawyer Division. And the reason that's important to know is that it's important to understand that disaster legal services are so integral to recovery that Congress told FEMA, you need to make this a part of the services that you provide.
Say that we are very thoughtful in what cases stay with a legal services organization and what cases go to a pro bono attorney. We had a case come in the other day that was someone who was being evicted in Henderson County. And we thought, this is not great for a volunteer. We chatted with Pisgah. They were able to take that case so that someone could be there in court. Cases that can go to volunteer attorneys are cases, often those remote advice cases, also cases that types of work that private attorneys already do. Insurance law. We're seeing a lot of need for title searches. Nonprofit issues. Folks are either who already have a nonprofit are experiencing challenges because of a variety of issues, or folks are creating nonprofits. That's great for an attorney who typically handles nonprofit work or does corporate work. So there are lots of things that private attorneys can take on. This is really just the iceberg that we're seeing right now. And I say that, but also we have a lot of volunteers who volunteer and say, I know nothing about any of this, but I want to help. And we completely understand that. So to that end, A couple folks have mentioned this before. This is on the Bar Foundation's website. This is literally just a screenshot from the website. The same website where you can go to sign up on the joint volunteer list are resources for volunteer attorneys. There are manuals, videos, libraries, and a whole host of things that we will be supplementing very soon. Kim has been organizing folks to film short videos on discrete issues. So even if you aren't able to attend the CLE on November 21st, you can still find a quick video on insurance claims or landlord-tenant issues, for example. So it's our expectation that these cases that are not deadline-driven, that are fairly discreet, that can be handled remotely, are really ripe for volunteer attorneys. Right now, I'd say we have roughly just under 100 cases that volunteer attorneys are currently working on. We anticipate, that's amazing that 100 volunteers are out there doing that work, but also we anticipate that need being so much larger and continuing for quite some time. So I will just say it one more time. We are having a CLE that is being hosted at the Bar Center and also virtually. The registration link went live yesterday, so folks can register for this. Hopefully there are folks in all of your jurisdictions who will be interested in joining. That link is on the same Disaster Legal Services website with the Bar Foundation, and we really hope that folks will be able to join. I'll say one more thing before I pass it to Sylvia, and that is that we are also working on trying to figure out how to leverage technology to make this work easier for volunteer attorneys. We've been talking with someone on how to do FEMA appeals using technology. So the volunteer attorney can do a fraction of the work that they would previously do by using a program that has already got some of the templates and information involved. So we are doing what we can to make this work accessible and to make it as helpful and clear as possible so that clients really get the help that they need. So now I'll pass it to Sylvia Novinsky, Director of the North Carolina Pro Bono Resource Center.
Thanks, Allison. About 6 years ago, I started working in the disaster legal services space because of Hurricane Florence. And we were fortunate enough to get a grant from IOLTA to fund a full-time staff attorney that really, I think, brought this issue to the forefront for us. And that is the Equal Access to Justice Commission, but also for all the organizations that support our legal services providers. We really got a crash course into